Awareness, the final frontier. These are the explorations of Jonathan Robinson and Brian Tom O'Connor. Their continuing mission, to discover fresh new paths to the mystery within, to seek out new joys and new methods of awakening, to boldly go into the heart of expanded consciousness. This is Awareness Explorers.
Welcome, fellow Awareness Explorers. Good to have you back. And there's always so much going on inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. We're honored that you take the time to listen to us blab about just the most important things in life. How to find peace, how to find love, and how to avoid the numerous potholes on that path. I'm with my fellow co-host,
Brian Tom O'Connor.
And Cosmic Compadre. And I'm Jonathan Robinson. And the topic today is Endarkenment versus enlightenment. The freedom that comes from not trying to be so spiritual all the time, and some great methods and ideas around that. And when I use this term, Endarkenment, Brian, what shows up in your brain?
Well, first of all, relief when you said not trying to be so spiritual all the time. That's the first thing. I really think that this idea that somehow we have to behave in a certain way or be a certain type of person or even achieve some sort of state is all just stuff in the way of seeing our true nature as happiness right now in this moment.
Absolutely. And I think we're starting to see through this. We have that term spiritual bypassing, but for me, I've done some workshops on this thing called Endarkenment. And it used to be in the 60s, people would have encounter groups where they'd let it all hang out. They'd be with, a group of people for 3 days in a room, and it would start out all nice and loving. And by the end, it was like, screw you, and you're a jerk, and, all that. And what I liked about that idea or format was it got beyond the veneer, and only if you're real are you really in a place of authenticity and spirituality, as far as I'm concerned, and awakening. That all the false ways we pretend to be spiritual or better than we are just keeps us from seeing how much we have to clean out before we can be really present. And so I have some ideas about how to approach Endarkenment as a path to enlightenment. But before I say some of my ideas, what ideas might you have along those lines?
Well, hearing you talk about the encounter group and letting it all hang out, I certainly remember those. I was in a few of those myself. But it makes me think that, there's not just two options, either expression of your emotions or suppression of your emotions. Those aren't the only two. I mean, we think, okay, I'm going to be authentic and not suppress my emotions. So what I'm going to do is spray them onto everybody else. That doesn't seem to me the option. It's really about internally whether you're allowing them, whether you're dropping the strategies that you've built up to not have the emotions. And I think that's far more important than just finding some way to express to everyone else what you're feeling.
Yeah, and when we express, I like how you put it, that there's not just, blindly expressing or suppressing. There's saying honestly where you're at in a vulnerable way. I'm in a current situation with a relationship that is very important to me. And I found myself kind of like not saying my needs, trying to be more spiritual than I am, being less needy than I am. And it created problems. So now I'm trying to do the other, which is, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I need. It involves some expression of, I'm terrible expressing anger, but, I have tried to say, this is what I'm feeling now. And it's really, to me, I feel like, and other people who know me say, well, that's my stretch into spirituality and growth. It's not pretending that totally peaceful when I'm not, and trying to be totally giving. And it's a tricky road because for some people, that's their stretch. And you have to be honest with yourself and know what is hard for you to do. And if it's hard for you to say your lowly, so-called lowly desires and needs, then that's the biggest stretch you can do into awakening in that moment. And that's a distinction which I think a lot of people in the awakening and spirituality camp don't necessarily consider enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the key word that you mentioned during that was pretending. When we pretend to be different from how we are because we think we're spiritual, that's really the essence of spiritual bypassing. When we're pretending that we're too spiritual to have this human emotion, which is actually present right now, and we're denying it, and we're not owning up to it, and we're not letting people know what our needs are. And we're not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. I think that's the other key right there. So I think it's all right. It's just as long as when we're expressing anger, we're really expressing it in terms of what is happening to us, because the temptation when expressing anger is to begin with an accusation. I'm really just telling you the truth about how I feel. You shouldn't do this. You're wrong. And that's just my honest expression of how I feel. You should be different. And that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. Really, all anger is a cover-up for either hurt or fear. So it's really more honest to express it in terms of those emotions, but to say, I am angry, and what it brings up is fear of losing something or feeling hurt that I didn't get something. But sometimes Endarkenment involves just saying what's going on with you from where you're at. And that can be scary. You know, a technique I use to help me with this is sometimes when I'm trying to get clear on what the right move is, I say a sentence that helps me point me towards authenticity. And that is, if I had no fear or no inhibitions in this situation, I would say or do blank. So in a relationship, if I had no fear or inhibitions, I'd say blank. If I had no fear or inhibitions in my work situation, I would say or do blank. And that points us to what's real. And I think Jesus said the truth will set you free. And I agree that we always have to go back to what is, even if what is does not fit our model of what's pretty.
Absolutely. In fact, I really think that if people only took away that from this episode, it would be immensely valuable.
Yeah. You know, sometimes, I've seen that when I get into arguments with somebody, which is very, very rare. I'm not an argumentative kind of person. But, when I've been mad and argued with somebody, sometimes these little truths come out. And marriage counselors will often say that arguing can be really good because some things that aren't expressed finally come out. And there's a certain relief when you kind of know the score of what's really going on. With animals, as you watch them, they don't hide, they don't pretend, they are who they are. And that's one of the things we most love about them, is that there's no pretense there. And in that way, there are teachers as well. If my dog doesn't want to play, he doesn't pretend. If I try to grab a bone from him, he goes, well, your hand's at stake, buddy. So it's really clear and really free because he doesn't have a concept of what would be spiritual or good. And I've noticed that when I've done therapy with more Catholics and Jews than other groups, and I'm Jewish, and I believe you're Catholic, aren't you?
Not anymore.
Oh, yeah, but you were born into Catholicism.
That's a matter of opinion.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, I went to Catholic school and my parents were Catholic and all of that stuff. But I don't identify that way anymore.
Yeah. And I don't identify as Jewish currently, but I saw that when I would do therapy with people with that upbringing, often they were brought up with a lot of guilt as to what was right and wrong behavior.
Yes.
And eventually I got to see and tell people that in order to know what was a good growth step for them, I would always tell them to follow their guilt. So if making them feel, if they felt guilty telling somebody what they really thought of them, I thought, well, that was probably a good idea. If they felt guilty saying what their needs were, I would say, well, that's probably a good GPS for you, is follow your guilt. Now, that's not true for everyone, but it shows how sometimes going towards what you think is guilty or wrong behavior is actually a step in the right direction from another point of view.
Yeah, it certainly can be, especially if you're the type of person who suppresses your own emotions and or desires, or if you're a people pleaser or that type of person. Obviously, there's the opposite type of person for whom this would be like a really bad idea. But we're talking about violent people, murdering people, criminals, etc. But I think for most of us, guilt is not the truth.
Yeah, right. So I've done some workshops in which a safe container was created to explore this idea of endarkenment, meaning being free to be your whole self or all the different selves in you without having this like spiritual governor on you, keeping you from being more your full self. And these workshops have been very high energy and very fun, believe it or not. But you have to create a safe container. I remember in one of them, that the woman had everybody pretend to be like St. Francis. And it was very sweet for about 10 minutes. And then it was like just kind of dull and lifeless and felt false. So that was interesting. And we did it for like an hour, but the last 50 minutes were, oh, you're lovely, or thank you, I'm so grateful. But it all had a ring that did not have truth and energy in it.
Mm-hmm. And
then she said, choose somebody who you feel is, if anything, lets it all hang out. If it could be anywhere from Hitler to your neighbor to, some media celebrity. And you didn't have to say who it was, but we were interacting as that person. Like, somebody who might say, that's an ugly shirt, or, I don't like spending time with you, or, boy, it'd be great for you and I to kiss in the corner right now. That's what I feel like. Certainly not politically correct. And this ended up being like a wild, fun, enthusiastic party in which energy was just brimming over. Now, in polite society, you can't do that necessarily because people can get offended and have feelings, rightfully so. But creating a safe container showed me that there's so much of ourselves that we are used to suppressing, and all that suppressing creates a mechanical behavior that is really distant vibrationally from awakening and aliveness.
That's right. And as your workshop showed, how much energy is taken up into controlling our natural selves and natural impulses.
Yeah. And you look at somebody like, Jesus, who got really angry at the money changers in the temple. He didn't say, "Hey guys, I feel really bad about this," and he threw over the tables. I wasn't there, unfortunately, so I don't know exactly what he did, but it sounded like it was not pretty or nice or politically correct, and that gives us some model that realness, even at the highest levels of spirituality, is still a good thing.
Yes, and one thing that story shows is that was simply human. That was, anger is a human emotion, and it arises, and it's real, and it's here, and it's present, and we're not bad people just because of it. And sometimes it's effective to express it when necessary. It's tricky to know the best way to express it, because when we really practice what it's like to walk in other people's shoes, what it's like to look out through other people's eyes and realize that everybody in the world is really doing the best they can, and even the very worst behavior is simply a totally ineffective and inappropriate method to get love, which is the desire of every human being. When we look at it that way, and when we really go deep into that, then we can relax a little bit our protection against saying and doing the wrong thing. But they have to go hand in hand. It can't just be, well, I'm going to be authentic and I'm going to say whatever I think and feel, no matter who it hurts. You have to temper that with, what must it be like for another person to hear this? If I say something, will it be harmful? Will they be hurt? Am I misunderstanding their intentions, or am I not sensitive to what it's really like to be them? So this is, like your two-wing analogy, we have to have both of those.
Yeah, really, so many things come back to that yin-yang two-wing analogy, that if you develop too much this wing of spirituality, you see that sometimes in New Age circles, the incense, the nice clothes, the sweet talking, and that can be nice, but it can also make you want to vomit after a while when it feels false.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the people who are too human. I use the word human in a kind of a coarse way, like, just not caring what other people think or feel, being inconsiderate, being unaware. And I think that being human in a real human way is a very spiritual thing. I like Brene Brown's stuff, where she talks about vulnerability, that is as important a path to spirituality and awakening as is knowing yourself as awareness, and that those two wings have to be there in relative balance, or something starts to smell bad.
That's right. That's right. We do really need both. We need sensitivity. We need openness to our own vulnerability. We need psychological wisdom. And we need deep self-inquiry into the true nature of our being. I think that we need both to be really balanced. And traditionally, in many of the older non-dual teachings, one of them is ignored, and then there's a whole other psychological world where the spiritual side is ignored, and and the middle way, I think, may be the best, even though my heart always goes with the self-inquiry, true nature, awareness way, as opposed to the fixing what's psychologically wrong with me way. But I may be imbalanced on that side.
Well, I don't think it's really about fixing. I think it's about allowing yourself to really say what you're feeling and wanting in a moment. It really comes down to that. In this relationship that situation, which I'm finding a lot of challenges in currently, they really arose because I kind of dug a hole where I wasn't saying so clearly what I was feeling and wanting.
Yes.
And now I'm having to dig myself out of that hole by saying, this is what I'm feeling and wanting, and being more human rather than, they had kind of put me on a pedestal, and I like being on a pedestal. Oh, no, whatever you want, I'm fine with that, until it wasn't.
Right. Sure. There's a big danger in that, but there's also a bravery in doing the opposite, in saying what you feel and what you want and what you need.
Yeah, yeah. And, when I do counseling with couples or individuals, I say the way to be human, the shorthand version, is to vulnerably say what you're feeling and what you're wanting, because those are the two things that are like most present to us. And to say what your needs are, when certain types of modalities, especially one called nonviolent communication or compassionate communication, it's all about, we have these needs for respect, or to be liked, or to be appreciated, or to be part of a group or community. And all these, we're trying to always satisfy these needs, but very few of us are saying those things directly. Like, gee, I really need you to hear me now. Or I really need some touch now. Or I really need you to appreciate how hard I've been working at this, or whatever it is, that's always going on. And if we're not aware of that, or even mentioning that, then we're kind of using our awareness to avoid our humanity rather than to go deeper into it.
That's right. And that's not what it's all about. It's not about avoiding our humanity. As a matter of fact, I would say almost more important than simply saying how you feel is asking yourself, what are my strategies that I'm using to not have this feeling?
Yeah. And that's another way we do things to avoid truly being human and free.
Yes.
And we spend a lot of time with these strategies.
Sure do.
We only have so much time, energy, and effort. So if we're spending 90% of it using very indirect strategies to hide what's really going on, that's not good.
That's absolutely right. And most of us spend the bulk of our lives, or at least the bulk of our energy, in that activity, in those strategies to not have our feelings. And then when we start to drop those, and we start to say, okay, just for now, just for the moment, just for the next 5 minutes, 1 minute, can I not do anything to prevent what's happening right now? Even if you only do that a few times a day, gradually, more and more, it will start to color your whole experience.
Definitely. Many years ago, I read a book called Don't Be Nice, Be Real. And he talks about all these things that we've been talking about. At some point during the book, he demonstrates what this is like. And he says, so why am I writing this book? Well, the reason that you might think is because I want to help people and, blah, blah, blah. But really, I like to be in a position where people are looking up to me, and I'm the kind of guru. Also, I could really use the money, and I like to think myself as kind of better than other people, and this helps me to feel really important. And you buying the book and saying what a wonderful book it is really reinforces a part of my ego that thinks that I am a good guy and better than people, and I'm kind, when really those are not the motivating factors that had me write this book. And I thought, thank you. Any politician, if asked, why are you running for president, if he could say, well, really, I like to feel powerful and important, and that's why I'm running, I'd vote for that person immediately.
I'm not so. I mean, I agree. It would be really refreshing, although I'm not so sure I would vote for them. I do think that there are politicians who really want to help, but what you just described is very, very human, and people who are authors, gurus, teachers, self-help specialists often deny that part of themselves. However, it's not either or. I mean, you can want people to look up to you and want to sell more books, and you can want to help people.
Absolutely. In the group that I was in for 25 years, we had a technique where basically somebody would say, well, why are you doing that or saying that? And the rule was that you would first look for the dirtiest motivation. Not that that was the only motivation or the right motivation. But once you said, well, I'm doing that because I want to impress you, and this is a sneaky way for you to think I'm better than I am. Once you said something like that, then you could say the other motivations. But at least you were acknowledging that that was probably in there at some point. Mm-hmm. And that made it you feel free and like you're on a firm foundation, because if you denied that, then the whole conversation or the whole thing that you were doing had kind of like a faulty foundation to it. And I try to do that now. Why am I doing this? What's the dirty reason? Knowing that there's other reasons as well. And I kind of encourage people to do this in little ways. Either ask themselves what might be the shadowy reason for this action or what I'm saying, or to let a little bit of that out in a safe container. And I've done this with just friends where I say, hey, are we okay letting go of some of our shoulds just for an hour to see what happens? Then we let out a little bit more of what we're thinking and feeling just to see what happens. And if at the end of the hour we hate each other and we never want to spend time with each other, then maybe we won't do this again. But I've done this with certain friends, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's been really brings up like compassion for the human condition and seeing just how much we are kind of not letting the shadow side out, and how it prevents us from seeing stuff that might be valuable to see.
Well, that's really great, because seeing that in yourself and at the same time seeing that in others can reinforce our feeling of how similar we all are underneath the surface, how we all are needy, how we all want love, how we all want acceptance. It's human, it's basic, and practically everything everyone does, when you really boil it down to the very bottom line motive, it is, in a sense, selfish. It's just whether it's effective or not. For instance, I want to live in a world where people are kind to each other and live in peace. And so I'm going to behave in a way that I think fosters that. But the reason I'm doing it is so that I can feel happy and comfortable. I mean, the bottom line reason is that I want to be happy in life. It just happens that I also understand that other people's happiness is key to making that happen. And so it's not true altruism. And of course, this is a philosophical point that can be argued, and I don't mind if you disagree with that. But our motives are based on our own desire for love and safety.
Yeah. And until you are free of needs, that's always the case. And I'm not there yet. And I'm gonna step out on a limb, Brian, and say that you're not there yet either. I hope that doesn't offend you.
It does not offend me in the least. I would go out on a further limb and say, I don't think anyone has no needs. I don't think anyone is free of needs. No matter what they say. Perhaps there's some, extremely enlightened people who sit in the cave and let the vermin eat their flesh and do nothing about it, which we've heard stories about. But this to me doesn't seem human. That's, I think we all are needy. We all have needs, and we're all capable of seeing those needs, asking that they be met, and hearing other people's needs and helping them meet them. And that's really the two sides of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
They both can happen. It's not just my needs and can they be met, but my needs are met more easily. My real underlying needs are met more easily when other people's needs are also met. It's all, we're not actually separate. It's all one system that interacts. It's like the universe is one living organism.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And part of the human journey is to see that, to express it, to hear it from others, and to realize that we're also something beyond all that, something connected to all that is. And being connected to all that is on occasion and feeling that actually makes it a little bit easier to dive into some of these vulnerable places, because you know that although you might have this or that need or feel this vulnerability, that there's a part of you that's also transcends that. And in that way, they are like two wings of a plane, that if you have both those things going, you can really soar.
That's right. That's right. And the part of you that does transcend that, it's good to know that it's already here and that it is love itself. It is unconditionally loving because it's like a clear mirror. Everything that appears in awareness just simply appears choicelessly. And so when we have trouble allowing things, when we have trouble allowing our emotions, or when we have trouble allowing the behavior of others, or when we judge ourselves and others, we can know that there's a part of us that is already free from judgment. So it takes the pressure off us. You just connect with that. You look inside and say, what's already there that's never changed since I was a little kid, that's already allowing? And you let that do the work. You just connect with it. You notice it, and it makes it easier for the what I call the little me to deal with life when it's connected to the big I in the background, which is universal awareness.
Mm-hmm. And that's why Endarkenment can actually be a path to freedom, because part of Endarkenment is you're allowing. You're taking off this sense of, no, it shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't do that. It's guilty. It's bad. It's wrong. All these things that really constrict that sense of allowing. And so taking off some of those shackles and seeing that that's okay. That's what's up now, is actually moves you in the direction of awakening for some people, because it is in the direction of allowing and unconditionally accepting. And that's where I think this all gets tied in together.
Yeah, I think you're right. That should and shouldn't are compartments in the mind. They're not actually facets of reality.
Yeah, my dog does not necessarily should and shouldn't me all day. He just, loves me. And if he wants to do something, he does it. He doesn't think, I should feel guilty that I'm eating this bone or something. That's not how animals work.
That's true.
So I challenge our listeners to, explore some of these things in little ways, saying what you're thinking, saying what you're feeling, maybe forming a connection with someone that creates a safe container for that. And let us know how it goes. We love your emails. We love your Patreon support, where you get a bunch of free stuff from us at patreon.com/awareness explorers. And we love hearing from you. And we do this partly because we're selfish and, and like it, and partly because we learn stuff in the process and we enjoy the feedback. Any last words before we do a meditation on Endarkenment?
I'm looking forward to the meditation, but I want to add to what you just said. One of the reasons we do this is selfish. It's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
And I just hope it's also fun for other people. And like when you're having fun and other people are having fun at the same time, then I don't care whether the motive is selfish or not. It's joyful. And to me, this is what life is all about.
Absolutely. So, to help you move towards that greater joy and letting go of some of those shackles, let's explore a meditation which I call Endarkenment. So, get yourself ready by doing whatever you need to do to settle in. You can do this with your eyes open or closed, whatever serves you. But I'd like you to contemplate this question. And the question is, if I had no fear or inhibitions, how might I be different? And I'd like you to take that into specific areas of life. So consider first a relationship with someone. Could be a lover, a child, a coworker, but just choose one person for now. And think of the times that you spend with them. And then think, if I had no fear or inhibition in how I relate to this person, how might that look different? Is there something that you would say to them about what you're wanting or appreciating or feeling or perhaps needing that has not been expressed? Can you imagine being totally honest with what you're feeling and wanting, and them being totally honest what they're thinking, feeling, and wanting, and imagining that that brings more aliveness to this relationship? And notice how that feels in your body as you imagine that. And once again, if you had no fear or inhibitions in regard to, say, the areas of money or work, how might you behave differently? Would you work less? Would you spend money on different things? Or would you just feel freer of worry and other obstacles that come up in those areas? And lastly, I want you to think of some part of you, some separate personality, like the critic or the achiever or the lover or the person who sometimes gets angry or whatever, any part of you that you've had a hard time accepting. And just come up with a simple label for that part. A part of you that may be needy or self-critical or something else that you've had a hard time fully accepting, acknowledging, and allowing. As best you can, allow yourself to accept and love that part, just as it is. When we try to push away or deny such parts of ourselves, it just causes us trouble in the end. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they say the first step is admitting you're an alcoholic. Yeah, okay. Maybe you're a doaholic. Maybe you're a rageaholic. Maybe you're a blameaholic. Maybe you're a complainaholic. That's one part of you. Could you allow, accept, and even love that part? Recognize that that's just part of your humanness. And by allowing that part to be as it is and acknowledging it, it helps it to relax, to perhaps be less problematic in your life. And when you can feel love for these, quote, endarkened part, these shadow parts of ourselves in yourself or others, that opens up a greater spaciousness. And finally, think of a part in somebody else that you don't like. Once again, friend, lover, coworker, doesn't matter. And as you get in touch with that dislike or resistance, perhaps you can think to yourself in a compassionate way, it must be hard being them with that behavior or that part. It must be hard being them with that behavior or aspect to their personality, and to feel compassion for them as well. You're not denying that they're screwed up. You're feeling compassion because they are screwed up. And with that sense of heartfelt compassion for yourself and others, towards all these shadow sides, you can relax more easily with what is. Allow what is, which is the first step in allowing awareness to fully blossom. And as you take some time now to very slowly come back to the room, come back to this moment, and slowly at your own timing, begin to open your eyes, allowing everything to be as it is. as the first step towards a life of joy, peace, and awareness.
Lovely.
So,
I really felt transported and enlightened through Endarkenment during that.
good. The Lord works in mysterious ways.
I enjoyed that meditation very, very much.
Good. And I hope that people become aware of this distinction and allow themselves to kind of play with it in a fun way and see if they can allow more of themselves out in a way that is fully accepting and does not at the same time cringe on other people's experience as well.
Yep.
And the other thing I would say is this is one way to explore whatever feels right to you. Please tell people about the podcast if you like it and enjoy it. And till next time, keep exploring.
Keep exploring. Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.